You'd be forgiven for not recognizing Assassin's Creed as it exists today. I myself played every game since the beginning, and then about 2 hours of Unity before I fell off. I only came back to the series once the yearly release schedule had been ditched. Playing Origins felt like returning to my hometown to find that everything had changed. In place of a historical playground focused on social stealth, I found an action game centered around progression and loot upgrades. That's not to say I dislike Origins. In fact, it's one of my favorite entries in the series. I love the world, its characters, and its balance between the old and the new. I also love its restraint, both in the size of its map and its willingness to not smother me with its activities. But when compared to its predecessor Syndicate, the difference is night and day. Origins almost completely abandons the idea of social stealth. You are no longer blending into crowds, hiding in plain sight, or causing commotions to slip unnoticed into enemy territory. As many fans have pointed out, getting rid of that social stealth is a pretty big deal. It's what made the series feel so fresh in that trailer 12 years ago. And I find it ironic that in a series so focused on the exploration of DNA that it seems to have forgotten its own. In a GDC talk earlier this year, Jean Gaston, creative director of AC4 Black Flag and Origins, explored the franchise's evolution throughout the decade. He recalled the creation of the first game when developers behind Prince of Persia: Sands of Time were given two mandates: to prepare for the next console generation and to reinvent the action-adventure genre. To do both, the team would focus on three pillars: combat, navigation, and social stealth. If you played any of the Assassin's Creed games, or at least any of the AC games before Origins, you can see these three tenets in abundance: the brutal close-quarters combat, the fluid and stylish parkour, the act of using crowds as camouflage, emerging only to kill before vanishing again right under your opponent's nose. As each new AC released in each new historical setting, it was these three tenets that tied the titles together. Of course, there's also the main allure of the series, and it's so obvious that Gaston didn't even need to include it in this presentation. It's the historical settings. In a recent interview with The Guardian, Jade Raymond, head of EA Motive, founder of Ubisoft Toronto, and producer of early Assassin's Creed games, called the historical settings sandboxes for creatives. By establishing a foundation and a fictional justification for these times and places, Ubisoft was creating a sustainable ecosystem. New developers could rise up, prove themselves, put their mark on the franchise, and keep the series fresh. This led to innovation at a steady pace. You can look at each game in the series and clearly remember its flagship feature. AC2 had the mission variety that AC1 was lacking. AC3 introduced naval combat, which is pretty prevalent in the series now. AC Syndicate gave us dual protagonists and the fan favorite rope launcher. Unity, for all of its flaws, paved the way for better navigation and added co-op to the main storyline. Even the fantastic and often overlooked Rogue reversed the roles of Templar and Assassin, turning you from the hunter into the hunted. Rogue also told one of the best stories in the entire series, but that's another video, so I'll leave that claim unsubstantiated here and entirely up to my own opinion. All in all, Ubisoft set out to create a franchise and instead stumbled upon a global phenomenon. It now comprises comics, graphic novels, short films, a feature-length movie, and numerous spin-off games. Since 2007, only 2 years have passed without a mainline Assassin's Creed entry. It became so pervasive that many felt it had grown stale. By the time Syndicate rolled around with its two playable characters and an engrossing Victorian London setting, it kind of felt as if we had seen it all. Leaving aside the possible time periods Ubisoft might still explore, it seemed like the well was about to run dry. Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot cited several reasons for the lack of an Assassin's Creed in 2016. One was Syndicate's relatively disappointing sales. Another was the need to develop new engines as the foundations for future games. And although Guillemot himself didn't mention it, various reports about development crunch and long working hours leaked from various levels of Ubisoft studios. So for one reason or another, it was time to give Assassin's Creed a break, if only for a little while. By the time we first glimpsed Assassin's Creed Origins, it had been in development for 3 years. Several Ubisoft studios, led by UB Montreal, revealed Origins at E3 2017, showing the Medjay Bayek in his Egyptian setting. This also confirmed an earlier leak from Kotaku when Origins was still known by its codename Empire. The trailer also showed a new style of combat, swapping the animation-focused melees of earlier games for a system based on hitboxes and deliberate timing. As more news poured out from E3, it became clear that Origins was also heavily influenced by RPG progression, with a full-fledged color-coded loot system. Were it not for Bayek's hood, his hidden blade, or the assassin's iconic leap of faith, it could have been a whole new series. Like I said before, I love Origins. I love its characters, its inhabitants, its vast stretches of empty desert. I love its ability to let me find my own story, but also the confidence to tell its own when need be. I also respect the hell out of its writers for tackling one of the most frequently fan-requested settings and for knocking it out of the park. It was a technological jump to be sure, but also a cultural one, and it represented a major shift in what the developers wanted Assassin's Creed to be. In this way, Origins was a major turning point, and as of now, I'm worried about the series' new direction. Assassin's Creed Odyssey is one of my favorite games this year, and I had a blast sinking 75 hours into its massive Greek archipelago. But still, it feels as if Ubisoft emphasized the wrong aspects from AC Origins. Its new identity is one of hundreds of side quests, numerous overlapping systems, and a loot fest that rivals that of Destiny or Diablo. Years ago, Assassin's Creed was setting precedents for open world design. Now, despite the fun I'm having with the series, it feels as if it's playing catch-up. I don't want to complain about an abundance of content, and I sure as hell don't want to complain about having fun, but still, at a certain point, I have to wonder if Ubisoft strayed too far. I'm almost always of the opinion that developers should evolve whenever possible. It brings a wider spectrum of games and experiences to the table and allows for fresh ideas to enter the ring at a regular pace. But I can also empathize with the people who feel as if Assassin's Creed is absent from the modern video game landscape. Social stealth is almost completely gone, the map feels more about size than substance, and the franchise feels built around its progression rather than its gameplay. This can still be fun, and I have had a ton of it, but at what point does Assassin's Creed lose its identity? At its core, Assassin's Creed's plot is one of freedom versus control. On the one hand, you have the Templars, an ancient order hell-bent on maintaining order through power and influence. The Assassins, on the other hand, represent the opposite, complete and utter freedom, even if it means overwhelming chaos. The story of the franchise's evolution is the exact same one: freedom versus control. And with all of its fourth wall breaking and self-aware storytelling, I can't imagine this irony is lost on the developers. They themselves are constantly grappling with that same dilemma, trying to find that balance between the control and order of earlier games and the player freedom of recent ones. I think there is a balance to strike, and it is fascinating watching them trying to strike it. Assassin's Creed as it stands today is the result of a 10-year search for an identity. In fact, you could argue that it's that very search itself that has come to define the series. I have no clue where that next 10 years will bring us, but I think one thing is for certain: that journey will be entertaining.